Hi, I am MedioCore, and in this video I will be explaining the entire main quest storyline of The Witcher 3 in mediocre fashion. Let's get into it. The story of The Witcher 3 takes place on a landmass that is conveniently named the continent. Back in the day, it used to be filled with gnomes, elves and dwarves, and life was overall pretty chill. But then, the conjuration of spheres happened. What's that? You see, Doctor Strange was f***ing around with the space-time continuum with Spider-Man and all those multiverses collided. This had dire consequences for the continent. The world, once brimming with only the elder races, now had to make room for magic, monsters and maybe worst of all, humans. The humans took a page from the Dutch people and colonized the fuck out of the continent and established themselves as the dominant race. In other words, life was pretty good for the humans, but the monsters were still looming large. It became clear that something had to be done about the monster threat. But what? What would be a sensible solution to this very complex problem? The best course of action had been decided, and it was thus. Children would be recruited or taken and be trained in swordsmanship. They would also be subjected to the Trial of Grasses, which is a magical ritual in which a body of a boy is mutated in that of a witcher. The survival rate is about 30%. These witchers will be used to deal with the monsters. With all the magical and scientific advancements on the continent, you'd think they'd have at least one organization geared towards human rights. Anyway, this is how witchers are created. In The Witcher 3, you play as Geralt of Rivia, a witcher of the Wolf School with a heart of gold.
You're awfully nice, you know.
I don't hear that often. Thanks.
Or not if you don't want him to.
In the oven. Throw him in the oven.
Geralt's story in The Witcher 3 picks up after the events of 8 novels and 2 games. As such, one could argue that it is super dumb that I start explaining the story at the very last entry in the saga, but I already made commitments to do this video, so we're just gonna roll with it. But first, this video took me over 4 months to make, so if you could find it in your heart to leave a like, maybe a comment, and if your is bigger than
15 inches, I'd say.
Why not consider subscribing? My self-worth is based entirely on external validation. Okay, back to the video. We start the game off in Kaer Morhen, where Geralt is busy making me question my own sexuality. Then, a naked lady summons a crab to stimulate his pee-pee, but he is not into it. This lady is none other than Yennefer of Vengerberg. For simplicity's sake, all you need to know for now is that Yennefer is like his goth GF. But not really, because their love is the product of a wish Geralt made to a genie, so it is left ambiguous if their feelings for each other are genuine. Geralt asks if she wants to smush booties, but Geralt promised Ciri that he would train with her, so Yennefer does not want to smush booties yet. Ciri is Geralt's child surprise. What is a child surprise? If a witcher does someone a service, but they have no means of paying, they can call it a love surprise, where they either request the first thing that comes to greet you, or what you find at home yet don't expect. The first one could be a dog or a nagging mother-in-law, and the second one could be a child still in the womb. Hence the term a child surprise. This is how some of the Witcher children are recruited. So how did Ciri of all people become Geralt's child surprise? I am so glad you asked. One day, Sonic the Hedgehog comes to Ciri's mother to ask for her hand in marriage, because Sonic claimed her by invoking the love surprise, but Ciri's grandmother is like, oh hell no, no way in hell my daughter is dating a furry, and orders to kill Sonic. Geralt, who is present for this legendary family squabble, intervenes and saves Sonic. Sonic is obviously grateful and asks how he can compensate him. Geralt calls the love surprise for the meme, but unbeknownst to everyone, Ciri's mom is pregante with Ciri at that very moment. So everyone's looking at Geralt like, what the fuck did you just bring up on this cursed land? So that's how that happened. Anyway, back to Kaer Morhen. Geralt goes now to train with Ciri, but finds that his mentor, Vesemir, has fallen asleep while teaching Ciri. Vesemir is the oldest witcher at Kaer Morhen and a father figure to everyone that lives there. I don't think it's likely that a terrible fate will befall him later in the game. Oh. Then they all turned happily ever after in the courtyard. Or do they? Out of nowhere the wild manhunt appears and they fucking kill Ciri. Or do they? Turns out it was all a dream. Geralt wakes from this dream while on a father-son bonding trip with Vesemir. After the events of the novels, Geralt lost his memory, and in The Witcher 2 he finally regained it and he remembers who Yennefer is. The Witcher 3 picks up with Geralt searching for Yennefer. They stop in a village called White Orchard, where a griffin is making life difficult for the local population. Geralt and Vesemir stop by the local tavern where Geralt meets Satan and develops his Gwent addiction. It also becomes clear that White Orchard has been occupied by the Nilfgaardian Empire. The Nilfgaardians took a page from the 16th century Dutch people and started to colonize defenseless countries in order to exploit them for labor, resources and raw materials. Haha. Geralt then finds his way to a Nilfgaardian garrison to ask for information regarding Yennefer. The captain is willing to do tit for tit. If Geralt defeats the griffin, he will tell him where Yennefer is. Geralt agrees and fucking murks the griffin with Vesemir's help. The captain tells Geralt that Yennefer is in Vizima, the capital of Nilfgaard. Victorious, Geralt and Vesemir share a drink at a local tavern, but get caught up in a friendly squabble, which leads them to be banned from the Discord server. Once outside, Geralt finally, after all these years, reunites with Yennefer. Yennefer tells him that the Emperor of Nilfgaard wants to see him. Reluctantly, Geralt agrees to go with her. Geralt and Yennefer, accompanied by a Nilfgaardian escort, ride for Vizima. On the way there, they are attacked by the Wild Manhunt. Only Geralt and Yennefer escape with their lives because of plot armor. They enter Vizima, and that is the end of the prologue. We then see a shot of Geralt once again in a bathtub. Unfortunately, that good time is interrupted by a jealous beta male who is envious of Geralt. He asks him to recount the events of The Witcher 2, where the player can choose what happened, which has some consequences for the rest of the game. Also, Geralt's beard is filled with lies. The Chamberlain then teaches Geralt how to dab on the haters, and he uses that newfound knowledge to dab on none other than the Emperor of Nilfgaard, who is also Ciri's biological father. That's right, we have met this dude before. For some reason, he is now the Emperor of Nilfgaard. He is affectionately known as the white flame dancing on the grave of his foes. Ciri, who is arguably the most important character in the Witcher books, is never mentioned in the first two games, but the main goal of The Witcher 3 is finding her again. The Emperor orders Geralt to find Ciri. On that note, Yennefer sends Geralt to investigate in Velen and Novigrad first and tells him to go to the Skellige Isles if nothing comes up. So Geralt sets out to Florida Velen and investigates a town that has been ravaged by the Wild Manhunt. There, he finds two leads: a baron with a drinking problem affectionately named the Bloody Baron, and a witch. Side note, it's entirely up to the player in what order some quests are completed, which makes the story non-linear. You can also make choices that alter some of the storylines. This is really fun when trying to explain the chronological order of these events. So for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna say that Geralt went to see the Baron first. This is now canonical. Fight me, Andrzej Sapkowski. So Geralt finds Robert Baratheon and asks him if he has seen someone with ashen hair and a scar on her face. Turns out he did, but there is a catch. The Bloody Baron's family is missing, which is totally unrelated to his alcoholism. He will only tell you where Ciri went if you help find them. So Geralt does that and enlists the help of a local peddler, who may or may not be intimate with his goat. There, he finds out that the Baron is abusive and that both his daughter and wife fled. Not only that, it also becomes clear that his wife miscarried. Geralt is infuriated, not only because he kept that information from him, but also because he wouldn't play Gwent with him. So instead of talking about their feelings like well-behaved gentlemen, they square the fuck up. After that, the Baron tells the whole story. It becomes clear that the wife miscarried, and thus the unborn baby has been cursed to become a botchling, which is like a cursed flying baby or something. Geralt is then presented with a choice between lifting the curse that plagues the botchling or outright kill it. Now, if you're not a goddamn psychopath, you will try to lift the curse. After doing so, the Baron will mourn the events that transpired and he gives his daughter a name, which results in a heart-wrenching moment where we can see the Baron reflecting, showing remorse and humanity in the process, which is good. What's even better is that we now have a flying fetus sidekick, baby! The botchling will show you where to find clues about the missing family, which leads Geralt to the nearby city of Oxenford, where the Baron's daughter Tamara is alive and well and has no intention of going back. We also learn that her mother Anna had been kidnapped by a monster. Geralt returns to the Baron with this news and tells him that his daughter is not coming back. Reluctantly, he tells Geralt more of Ciri's tale, but withholds the rest of the story until Geralt finds his wife for him. Unfortunately, this is where the leads dry up for the Baron and his family, so Geralt sets out to find the witch he had heard about earlier. The witch is none other than Keira Metz, who also appears in the books that you haven't read. They meet, she flashes him, and some bunnies make babies. They then set out to explore some abandoned ruins to look for some clues that might indicate where Ciri is now. When exploring the tomb, they realize they are not alone. The Wild Manhunt is also there, coincidentally also looking for Ciri. They square up, find notes left by an elven sage that has ties with her, and they learn of the witches of Crookback Bog. Those vile witches are suggested to know where Ciri is, but before you set off, you can do a side quest for Keira. Because there's a lot of implied sexual tension, that is probably what you're going to do first. After that side quest, Geralt sets out to see the witches and rides for Crookback Bog. When he arrives, he spies no witches. There's only an old woman and a handful of children. Bonus points if you can guess the identities of the old woman now. Geralt tries to convince the old woman to let him speak to the witches, but she's like,
"Not allowed."
Geralt then enlists the help of Johnny, a godling, and the old woman is like,
"Well, since you put it that way, Johnny, I'll help him."
The old woman contacts the witches through a tapestry, which is pretty hardcore. The witches send Geralt to look into a matter in Downwarren and give him a dagger to collect payment. If you're thinking that sounds shady as hell, I only have one thing to say to you. Yes, but Geralt is unfazed and speaks to the aldermen in Downwarren. They have been plagued by an evil spirit that has possessed a nearby tree. And Geralt is like, "I'm giving you to the count of 3 to fuck off." The spirit tells him that the children living in the bog are in danger. At this point, Geralt can choose to kill the tree spirit or set it free, which has consequences for the rest of the subplot, which we'll get back to later. Regardless of what is chosen, the spirit stops plaguing Dunwern. Now, it's time to play a game of peasant payment. Geralt gives the alderman a dagger and he cuts his own fucking ear off. Almost immediately after, the alderman suffers from the meanest case of ear inflammation I've ever seen. After that, it's time to get a reward from the beautiful witches, and what the fuck? So these beautiful women probably ate the orphans that the old lady was caring for. Not only that, it's revealed that the old woman is none other than Anna, the bloody wife's baron. Nee, the bloody baron's wife. Holy shit. If you killed the tree spirit earlier, the children will get eaten by the crones, which causes Anna to lose her mind, and the bloody baron will set out on a quest to take her to the Doctorville equivalent of the Witcher world, but Velen stays at relative peace. If you set the tree spirit free, the children will be saved, but the crones will put a curse on Anna. This turns her into a water hag, but luckily Geralt will save her only for her to die immediately after. This will motivate the baron to extend his spine on a tree, and Velen goes into disarray because the baron is not there to keep order. In my opinion, this is one of the best quests ever written in any RPG. That being said, both of these outcomes fucking suck. Anyway, the crows tell you what they know about Ciri and leave the scene, but not before making me question everything I thought I knew about my own sexuality. Also, during our last conversation with the baron, this guy named Uma shows up, and he is obviously not a red herring. He'll probably be of paramount importance later in the story. Because we located Anna, the baron tells us that Ciri has left for Novigrad, which is her next destination. The situation in Novigrad is pretty lit. Geralt's lover of yore, Triss Merigold, informs him that the Church of the Eternal Fire as well as King Radovid is barbecuing mages and non-humans. In Novigrad, you can totally do a side quest to help Triss evacuate all mages out of Novigrad to stop them from being burned alive. But the flames don't stop there, because you can rekindle the flame you had with Triss in the previous two games. The question is if you want to, because if you do, you cannot pursue a romance with Yennefer without consequences. What's more is that in the first two games, Geralt suffers from amnesia and Triss abuses that situation to trick Geralt into a relationship. So when a beautiful sorceress takes advantage of someone's memory loss to touch their butts, it's okay, but when I do it, I get a restraining order filed against me. We also meet Sigismund Dijkstra, whose name should actually be pronounced Dijkstra if you want to get technical and colonial about it. He is a spy master who can help Geralt with information in exchange for services. The two are not on great standing, because in the books Geralt snapped his leg in two. Despite that, he trusts Geralt enough for some reason to include him in his conspiracy/side quest to murder the sadistic King Radovid, the king in the north. To be honest, the rest of the middle part of this game story is not all that interesting, and I'm kinda not feeling it anymore, so we're going to go through it as fast as possible. Struck the fuck up. After visiting a neuromancer, a mob boss, and performing in a substandard school play, we learned that Dandelion, a poet and one of Geralt's best bros, was one of the people who saw Ciri last. Problem is, he has been captured, so we're about to go Mission Impossible on his ass. Dandelion then explains that he and Ciri had to escape from the aforementioned mob boss. This did not go according to plan, and Dandelion sacrifices himself to save Ciri, who gets Thanos snapped just in time. Also, because Dandelion is the one telling the story, I am willing to debate if he actually tried to save Ciri the way he said he did, but that's besides the point. Even though he's way too pretty for jail, Dandelion gets arrested, and that is the last he has seen of Ciri. So, the leads have dried up almost as bad as the puss of a nun. So our last bet is visiting the Skellige Isles. Geralt buys passage on the ship and he gets on the way there. When he washes up on shore, a bubble butt bottom bitch boy insults Yennefer, so we fucking deck him, and that marks the start of the third part. The king of the Skellige Isles suffered from die, and we meet Yennefer again for his funeral, where they engage in inappropriate flirting, after which they discuss what they have found so far. Later that night, they attend a wake where they decide it's a good idea to steal a magical mask from a Skellige druid. The mask allows them to see into the past, and they find out that Ciri came to the Skellige Isles with an elven sage. Ciri and the elven sage are pursued by the wild manhunt on Skellige and once again have to escape. This leads Geralt and Yennefer to a Skellige village where they seek a man named Skjall who helped Ciri escape. Unfortunately, Skjall also has suffered from die, and Geralt is like, damn it, this is where this lead ends. And Yennefer's like,
oh really?
Yennefer resurrects this poor sod through black magic in excruciating detail and agony, and even though Skjall can only talk like this, he nevertheless tells a very detailed and gripping story about his time with Ciri, which to me is a little weird, but oh well, we'll suspend disbelief and whatnot. Ciri was nursed back to health in Skjall's village, and there the player has the choice to do nothing, be bisexual, or put the moves on Skjall. So this is the point where I have to call a little bullshit. You're telling me that Skjall, who is already dead at this point, and even uttering a single word is so excruciatingly painful for him, still takes the time and effort to flex that he almost got with Ciri? Nah. Now if I would have had to write that scene, it would have gone a little something like this. Hey, it's me Skjall, do you wanna kiss?
To be honest, I prefer women.
No!
Anyway, whatever the player chooses, the wild men raid the village and Skjald takes it upon himself to escort Ciri away to safety. They find the elven sage who puts Ciri to sleep and on a boat. Meanwhile, Skjald gets ficked in the arse. And the last thing he sees before he leaves this mortal realm is Uma, the guy from before. Luckily, Geralt remembers the funny little guy from his dealing with the Baron. So that is the next logical step, but before he goes, Geralt can help Yennefer with a special request. The request being lifting the wish Geralt made that they'd always be together in order to assess if their feelings for each other are real or not. Now, if you're already committed to Triss, you'll get in trouble for doing this quest, but if you're not, you are free to pursue this course of action. Or, if pursuing women is not your thing, you can just do nothing, play Gwent and make lackluster YouTube videos for 20 viewers. After collecting Uma from the Baron, Geralt then brings him to the Emperor because he thought it'd be funny, and then they go to Kaer Morhen where he meets with Yennefer and his Witcher buddies. Yennefer, during a night of heavy drinking, is like, hey, you know what'd be funny if we'd expose Uma to the Trial of Grasses, which is the ritual where young Witcher boys are exposed to an ungodly amount of chemicals in order for them to become Witchers. So naturally, the Witchers are like, okay. During the Trial of Grasses, Uma transforms into the Elven Sage. His name is Avalach. He knows where Ciri is. He himself hid her away on the Isles of Mist. Geralt then sets out to retrieve Ciri, and after everything he has done to save Ciri, he finds her in a cabin and he thinks her to be dead, which leads to this scene. So Geralt and Ciri finally reunite, and Ciri tells him that the Wild Manhunt is after her because the Wild Man world might fall victim to the White Frost prophecy. She then teleports him to Kaer Morhen. Everyone is super happy for a moment, but then they're like, hey, the Wild Manhunt will be here any second. So Geralt can recruit all kinds of people he has met so far, which leads to an Avengers Endgame standoff like this. But then, the unthinkable happens. During the battle, Vesemir is killed in order to protect Ciri, and Ciri then showcases her power. This causes the Wild Manhunt to retreat because it's a little spooky. They then hold a funeral for Vesemir, and Ciri gets ready to go John Wick on those motherfuckers. Later, Geralt is awakened by Ciri, who knows where to find Vesemir's murderer, Emmerith. But first, Geralt has a choice if they go straight away or go visit the Emperor because that was his mission. For the best ending to this story, you should just skip the Emperor altogether. If you do go to the Emperor, you have the choice to sell Ciri, and if you ever did that, I'll never talk to you again.
Geralt?
14.
After that, they set off to the Balboy Mountains where Geralt kills Imlerith.
Who told you to fight like this?
The Witcher you slew.
Ciri fucking murks 2/3 of the Crone. One of them gets away and steals Vesemir's Witcher medallion. Meanwhile, in Novigrad, the sorceresses are trying to reunite the Lodge of Sorceresses, which was a team of powerful sorceresses in the books that you haven't read. Geralt aids by attempting to recruit as many sorceresses as he can find to help him fight the Wild Man. Once you freed sorceress Philippa Auhart, Dijkstra wants to slap the ever-living shit out of her because he broke her heart or something. Now, to make him back off, you can either provide him with political information or have history repeat itself. If you break Dijkstra's leg in two again, you cannot continue with the Regicide side quest. Geralt also travels between worlds with Avalanche to talk shit about Eredin, the leader of the Wild Men, so that the people loyal to him will betray him. Thus, they learn of the Sunstone, which can be used to lure the Wild Man into place. So with most of the Lodge's sorceresses now in tow, Geralt and friends sail to Skellige to make preparations for the final battle and find the Sunstone. Geralt arranges the release of sorceress Fringilla Vigo with the Nilfgaardians and she joins the team. Philippa and Geralt then set off to find the actual Sunstone, which they do, and with that, everything is ready for the final battle. But before that, Ciri and Yennefer decide it's a good idea to spy on Avalach. Geralt, Yennefer and Ciri then go to Avalach's lab, where Ciri gets pissed off because an elf is kinda mean to her. The most sensible thing to do in this situation is annihilate his lab. After reducing Avalach's lab to rubble, Ciri says that she wants to visit a man named Skellige before the final showdown, which turns awkward.
I met a young man, Skellige, and I'd like...
Skellige is dead.
I love this scene. Ciri is like, hey, how do all y'all know Skellige? And they're like, You can then visit his grave with Ciri or be a total dick about it, which also impacts her ending. After that ordeal, Geralt and co use the Sunstone to lure the wild men into place, and then they all prepare for the final battle. During the battle, the wild men are like, hey, you guys should cool off. Only Ciri is spared by the frost, and she squares up against Caranthir, who is Aradin's right hand man. Ciri is about to lose against him, but she blinks away. Luckily, Geralt's plot armor has a built-in heater and he unfreezes, where he finishes off Caranthir. Geralt then fights Aradin. Aradin, with his last breath, tells that Avalanche has kidnapped Ciri and has deceived them both. Convenient to the plot, the White Frost prophecy occurs and shit is lit.
The White Frost!
See, I told you. Inside a very high and climactic tower, Geralt confronts Avalanche. And he tells Geralt that he's only doing this because Ciri is destined to stop the White Frost, but doing so will likely kill her. Geralt is like, you talking bullshit, my man. But then Ciri is like, no he ain't. And Geralt is like, I'd bet. Now, the player has the choice to support Ciri or forbid her from doing this. Depending on what you say in this conversation and how you've supported Ciri thus far, Ciri will either 1. Stop the White Frost, fake her death and become a traveling witcher. 2. Stop the White Frost, not fake her death, reluctantly become the Empress of Nilfgaard. And 3. Stop the White Frost but fucking die in the process. The first option sees Geralt informing the Emperor that his daughter has passed, and then proceeds to dab on his bad parenting skills.
You weren't a good father. Ciri saw you as a threat.
He then travels to White Orchard, pre-orders a custom-built rig and meets someone in a tavern. That someone is none other than Ciri. Ciri then sets out to become a traveling witcher. Best ending 10 out of 10. The second option has Ciri become the Empress of Nilfgaard. This only happens when you've taken Ciri to see the Emperor and other conditions are met. This is arguably the best ending for the world, but not the best ending for Ciri and Geralt. The third option has Ciri doubting herself while stopping the White Frost and only occurs if you've given her reasons to doubt herself. For example, by human trafficking her to the Emperor. She manages to stop the White Frost but dies in the process. Geralt then fucks up the last remaining crone and it's implied he lets himself get killed by monsters. If Geralt was successful in assisting in Radovid's assassination, Nilfgaard will win the war because Radovid is die. If Geralt is unsuccessful or doesn't bother, Radovid will win the war and an age of fascism against mages and non-humans will begin, which is fucked. If Geralt romances Yennefer, he'll live his life with her, where she will probably just nag him all the time. If Geralt romances Triss, they'll relocate to Kovir to live out their days. If Geralt did not romance anyone, or god forbid both of them, he will end up with neither Triss nor Yennefer, but he will fuck his horse. And that is the main story of The Witcher 3.
What the hell was that?
If you like this one, why not check out the story I explained I did for Skyrim? Okay, goodbye.